Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video of On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis that is not beholden to any mainstream media source. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. As new developments in the 2028 cycle arise, with the vice president being able to tout some certain victories with President Trump, and he's done a little bit more interviewing as of right now, and Gavin Newsom has been going on his mocking Trump tour, as I call it. And it's very interesting because Gavin Newsom's goal is to try to act like Donald Trump and do things like Donald Trump that would be able to kind of magnetize a certain group of voters, but also make fun of the president to kind of almost poke fun at him and his supporters, to kind of prove like, oh, if anybody else were to do what Donald Trump is doing, it would look stupid. Now, I understand the strategy that the governor is imposing, but I actually don't think it's quite effective. I actually think it's actually going to make him look a little bit less appealing to a Democrat electorate, just because of the fact that it's going to seem like he's just always copying Donald Trump, and his whole stick is just Donald Trump. And the whole thing is that he's not going to be running against Donald Trump on the ballot in the next general election. He's going to be running against JD Vance, right? And so that is going to be, a big issue for him. And regardless whether or not you have JD Vance ties to Peter Thiel and Palantir, which is going to affect his image to a degree in the election, I think that's actually going to prevent him from winning like 400 plus electoral college votes. Like if JD Vance didn't have any huge business ties like that, Vance would be on track to win by like 350, 360 or more electoral college votes. But because you have all that tainting his reputation, it does kind of still put the electoral college in like the 270 to 320 range as of right now. And currently, I do have Vance as the favorite to win the general election against Gavin Newsom, but the map does look a little bit different than the last time we had an election in the United States. It's official. This is the third priciest stock market in over 150 years. The previous two didn't end well for investors. In fact, all five prior instances, stocks plummeted 20% to 89%. September is the worst performing month for the stock market. Meanwhile, gold has significantly outperformed the S&P for the past 20 years. Gold is up 600% over the past 20 years, and the S&P is only up 400%. Gold surged 40.5% in April of 2024 till April of 2025. Ray Dalio warns the world is on a verge of an economic heart attack. The U.S. collects $5 trillion and spends $7 trillion, and our debt is over $37 trillion. Ray Dalio says we are at the point of no return and recommends gold. Goldman Sachs and Vanguard warn of planetary returns for the S&P over the next decade. Forecasts for gold are as high as 7,000 an ounce, and silver is just getting started. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention On Point Politics and you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has a no-fee-for-life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Call 888-795-9430 for a free investor guide today. Patriot Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer 9 years in a row. Call 888-795-9430. Looking at the betting markets as of right now, Gavin Newsom's chances of actually winning the presidency have gone up, about 5 percentage points, or actually it's 6 percentage points. So that's actually quite impressive for the most part. So he is only about just around 9 points below JD Vance in the betting markets, and Vance has kind of fluctuated between 28 and 27%. So nothing has really budged for Vance as of right now, which is kind of interesting. We look at the Republican nomination. JD Vance is at about 53%. So his odds have actually fallen since the end of July, which is quite fascinating, with Steve Bannon at 4th place in the betting markets ahead of all the other Republican contenders. Steve Bannon is in 3rd place and Marco Rubio at 10% in the betting markets, and Vance kind of at about 3%. You can see Bannon's odds have actually fluctuated quite a bit And then now on the Democratic side, ever since Gavin Newsom put his, you know, put himself in the forefront of the redistricting war, his odds went from 19% all the way to about 31% and even peaked at about 34 percentage point odds on August 26th. And you see that Dwayne The Rock Johnson is actually started being in the betting markets at the end of July and has actually started to pick up some momentum in the betting markets to the point where he's actually a little bit ahead of P. Buttigieg uh, as in the third place to be the Democrat nominee, according to the poly market odds, which is very interesting. Now, going ahead and looking at our electoral map here, it's a similar map to 2016, 2020, and 2024, but there is some slight differences. Vance's coalition is going to be that of a wider electorate, meaning Vance will do worse with Hispanic and black voters, but actually he doesn't do worse with black voters. He actually does better with them. I think like in terms of the Asian slash other vote and Hispanic voters, Vance will do a little bit worse with them, quite substantially worse with Hispanics actually compared to Trump. But I think with white and black voters, Vance does perform substantially better to the point where he's able to build a coalition to narrowly beat Gavin Newsom in the Electoral College. And really, the main problem for Gavin Newsom is that he is another San Francisco liberal Democrat from the state of California who does have a very, very mediocre slash bad track record. It is very, very bad. He has not had a good reputation as the governor of California. And I think that's going to be his biggest weak point. He is a very good speaker. He is a very good orator, but at the end of the day, you do need to have a record. And I think in a contentious election like this, I think especially that Vance will have the fundraising advantage. Given the fact that Trump is building up his super PAC and all this stuff, I think that he's probably going to be able to beat Newsom in the Electoral College. And with that, I mean, just looking at the safe states for the election, it's just very obvious that Vance is still on track to, win a decent amount of them. He is winning, we can see here, he is winning roughly, give or take, looking at the map, he is basically winning about 128 safe electoral college votes on the map. All of these wins are over 12-point wins. He actually improves in the state of Iowa from Donald Trump's performance, which is very interesting. Again, this is because his coalition is that of a wider electorate, so he will perform better in states that have more of a white population. Like in Missouri, he does a little bit better. He does a little better in South Carolina. And Louisiana and Mississippi, they're like very narrow differences in those states, like very minimal shifts. Like, in Kentucky, it's basically the same. Indiana, it's a slight improvement. West Virginia, very slight improvement. And then again, because of that improvement with the black vote, even states like Maryland and Delaware actually end up shifting towards Vance very narrowly on the margins, like just very, very narrowly. Looking at the safe Democrat states, though, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Hawaii, as well as Illinois, Maryland, Delaware, DC, Massachusetts, Vermont, as well as New York, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and Maine's first congressional district, are all in that safe Democrat column. And again, because Newsom does a little bit better with the Asian and Hispanic vote, he's able to actually kind of make some gains with some voters, especially kind of making some gains with suburban white voters. He's actually able to make some strides electorally. He almost wins Colorado by 13 points on the map here. He's winning Oregon by a little bit more than he did in the last elect, or like he's losing Oregon, or like Gavin Newsom's barely outperforming Harris in Oregon, but in Washington, he does do, he wins it by 19.9%. California is a 24-point win for Newsom. So that's a 4-point shift from Trump's performance in the state. So not looking great for JD Vance there, but still, he kind of holds his own with the Hispanic vote, but Newsom definitely does do better given Vance's weakness with that category. We can also see that, in Colorado, New Mexico, Vance is doing a little bit worse. Illinois, you could see that Newsom actually does significantly better. He's winning the state by 14.1%, which is only 3 points off from Biden's margin in the state. New York is a 14.2 percentage point win. That is roughly about a 1.5 point shift away from the Democrat. Massachusetts, Connecticut shift away, or from the Republican. Massachusetts, Connecticut shift towards the Democrat. Rhode Island doesn't really budge anywhere. As of right now, it really doesn't move. Maryland and Delaware are the only safe Democrat states from the last election that budge ever so slightly in favor of the Republican candidate. And that is because of the black vote kind of making some shifts there. The likely Republican states are Alaska, as of right now, Texas, Ohio, Florida, and Maine's 2nd congressional district, which does put Vance at 219. Now, Ohio is a very slight improvement from the last election, very, very slight, just 0.2 percentage point improvement. And we could see Florida is about a 2-point loss for Vance. It's not really that he does worse than Trump in terms of raw vote share. I think he actually does a little bit better there, but I think it's Newsom cracks about 5 million in the state, and that's kind of where Newsom's able to kind of make some gains as of right now. And then even in like a state like Texas, again, Vance is doing okay there. He's getting about 6.17 million votes there, but Newsom is getting about almost 5.2 million there, given Newsom's improvement in some of those suburban areas and some of the Hispanic areas of the state. And so therefore, you do have a significant improvement for the Democrat nominee there. And he's only winning Texas, Vance is, by only 9.5%, which in this case would be about a 4.2 percentage point shift to the left. So that is what we're currently seeing right now in the state of Texas. Looking at the likely Democrat states, New Mexico, as of right now, falls in that category. Virginia is now in the likely Democrat column once again, as well as New Jersey, including Maine at large. So those will all fall in the likely Democrat column in this election. We can see Virginia is a 6.3 percentage point win. New Jersey is about a little bit like a point more Democrat than before. And Maine is actually about a 0.5 point more Republican in the cycle, given that Vance does a little bit better with the white vote overall. His coalition is whiter than Donald Trump. So naturally, in a state like Maine, where it's very, very white population, you're going to have him do just a tiny bit better. And even in New Hampshire, Vance doesn't even underperform that much from Trump there either. It's only like a 0.3 percentage point difference there. But that pretty much leaves you with Vance at 219 and Newsom at 211 electoral votes. And looking at Newsom's lean electoral votes, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Nebraska, 2nd congressional district all fall in this column, with New Minnesota being about 0.6 percentage points more Democrat. That state, it has always been very left. But again, with Vance having a wider coalition, Newsom will gain in the city area, but Vance will gain in the rural areas. So you kind of have a little bit of a cancellation there where the state doesn't really budge much. And then you do have the one flip on the map here, which is the state of Nevada, which ends up flipping it back to the Democrats, with Newsom winning it by 2.1%, actually. The state is very interesting. When the Democrat wins it, I mean, Joe Biden and Hillary both won it by 2.4%. And so, and this is with the turnout going up as the years go on, and the turnout in this election is very high. As of right now, they both get about over 800,000 votes in the state of Nevada. And because a lot of money would probably be spent here. And so it'd be a very highly contested race. And with Newsom pouring a lot of money into, Las Vegas, and, the fact that Vance doesn't have the same appeal with Hispanic voters, Newsom might actually be able to flip the state back in the scenario, and he actually wins it by 2.1%. So a similar margin to Hillary and Joe Biden won it by 16 and 20. The lean Republican states include Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Now, Arizona moves to the left from the last election. They both get about 2 million votes here. So the turnout here is really high, but it's about a 2-point win for Vance, and Vance is winning it by about 50,000 votes or so. So it's a fairly comfortable margin in Arizona for Vance, given the stakes in the election. In Georgia and in North Carolina, you do have better victories for Vance and in both of these states. Vance is winning the state of North Carolina by 3.5%, and he's winning Georgia by 3.6%, because again, his coalition is wider on average than somebody like Donald Trump. And so because of that, you do have a little bit of a realignment where a state like Georgia isn't going to be as competitive for the Democrats, because Vance is performing better with some of those demographics that Trump did well with in 16. And that includes a lot of people in like the Atlanta area. So Georgia is kind of one of those states, in North Carolina, where, I mean, even if Newsom were to win the Electoral College, he'd probably win it through like the Rust Belt in Arizona. I really don't think he'd win Georgia, just because the rural areas and some of the exurban areas, I really don't think Newsom would appeal that greatly there. Vance gets about 2.8 million votes in the state of Georgia, and Newsom is cracking a little bit higher than Harris in the state, like 2.68 million. So the turnout there is also ridiculously high, and it actually votes to the right of North Carolina by like 0.1% in this election. The other state that falls in that category is the state of Wisconsin, which is also very interesting as well, because we clearly see that Wisconsin was the closest Rust Belt state in the last election. Now it is the reddest and most non-competitive Rust Belt state. Vance gets 1.7 million votes there. Newsom about 1.67 million votes, and Vance is winning it pretty comfortably on this map. And then Michigan and Pennsylvania end up narrowly falling in his cards, and he ends up winning with 306 electoral votes. Michigan goes down by 1.3%. It's a very narrow shift away from the 2024 margin. And then Pennsylvania shifts to the left by like 0.7%. It's like a 20,000 vote win for Vance. So Vance kind of struggles in some of the suburban areas and some of the urban areas here. But again, some wider exurban areas trend to him, and some of the rural areas trend toward him. So that kind of cancels out a little bit of the losses in these states, and you do have him narrowly winning them. And so looking at the map, Vance would win the election with 306 electoral college votes to Newsom's 232, with the only state flip being the state of Nevada back into the Democrat column. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.